Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on? A brand new week of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you, as always, for watching and for listening. If you haven't done so already, please follow, subscribe. Really helps us continue to grow this show of ours. This is a Monday show, a brand new week. The NFL draft is in the books, which means, as usual now, I am joined by my man from New York City, Joe from Queens, fresh off a Sunday afternoon family trip to the zoo. What's going on, dude?
That did not happen.
It didn't happen.
No, that's why we were home early. We got to the Bronx. We got to the Bronx Zoo, and it was like a madhouse. We couldn't find parking in like the parking lot. The first parking lot was full, and they're like, you have to go to the other parking lot. It took like 30 minutes to get to the other parking lot because of traffic. We got to that parking lot, and they were like, yeah, we're full too. You had to go to a college, and I was like, yeah, we're done. We're out. So we got there. It was a lesson learned. We had company over this morning, so we didn't go. We didn't leave until like around like 12:15, and when we got there at 1, it was like 1. It was that it was just we couldn't get in. So yeah, so you go to the Bronx Zoo if it's a nice day out, which it was here. Go when it opens. That's what we learned. So
you know what, dude? So real quick story. I'm born and raised. Well, I'm raised in Buffalo. Technically born in Buffalo too. But when I was born, we lived in New York City in the Bronx.
Oh, really?
I don't remember barely any of it. I was like a baby, but I do remember. I don't remember. I remember being told by my mother how we used to go to the Bronx Zoo all the time. I have been there though since, like I said, literally since I was a baby. I haven't been to the zoo here in Buffalo either in a long time. But anyway, yeah, I mean, when you can get out, I'm sure it's a nice, cool thing to do with.
We have like season passes that we just got, and we're like, yeah, we'll use them when we're not doing anything. It was a really nice day, and it is what it is. It's fine. We'll go in 2 weeks because we have a season pass. But
sure.
Yeah, zoos are cool. They got good, they have, as a dad, they have a good beer there. So I'm just, last time I went, I got a beer and I was strolling around with the kid. I was like, yeah, I'm a dad.
Everything you seem to do is like kind of connected to having a beer wherever it may
Try
be.
to, yes. I might
no wrong with that.
Problem.
Not an insult.
I might have a problem. Yes.
Not an insult at all. All right, so we're going to be talking today. We're going to kind of go through the Bills draft a little bit and get you like more big picture takeaways as opposed to going down the list and analyzing, each and every player. I mean, to your credit, you make it no secret. You're not really, you care about the draft, obviously, because it affects the team that you follow, but You're not one of those guys. I venture to say it's been a long time since you've done a mock draft. Am I correct to say that?
I did a mock draft. I think when I used to have my website, I would do if I was the Bills GM piece. And I would do a mock draft. Like, here's how I have the Bills picking this guy. And it would basically be me going to like CBSSports.com, looking at their big board and going, okay, the Bills pick 30th. Who's the 30th best player around there? Like who I want. And then like when they picked 62nd, you go there. Yeah, that was the last time I get it. I remember the one. Yeah, the only time I remember, I think I mocked Jimmy Clausen to the Bills way back in the day, with which I think was 2010. I think it was the Spiller draft. I don't remember where it was, but yeah, I remember him. He was supposed to. All the rumors he was going in the top 3, and then he dropped to the second round, which was hilarious. But
sure, my point is this: is you're one of those guys. You're going to learn about the player more after he's drafted, as opposed to watching mock draft after mock draft and. Doing all this reading on a bunch of prospects before they even come into the league. You're more of a learn about the guy afterwards.
Yeah, and look,
he's a good fit type of guy, which most fans are, by the way. There are very few fans actually knew more than maybe 15 to 20 of the top prospects that come out each year. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that's generally the way it is.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry. And I understand why people get into it. I can see why it's a fun hobby, but part of me is just like, you don't know. Like, I don't want to get my hopes all like, oh, this guy's great. And then like he comes in and he's like, no one knows. So I don't, it's kind of like, I just don't bother, but I get it. I get why like you do it a lot. And I get why the content bros do it. Like in terms of watching film and like reading as much as they can. I don't I've gotten less and less into that because I'm just like, just let me know when the draft gets here.
Sure, and that's the way, a lot of people are. I'll say this though, when it comes to mock drafts, and I've talked about a little bit on the show recently, it's not so much about being predictive and the accuracy of them. It just kind of gives you trends of where teams might be leaning, and it gives you an opportunity to just get deeper into the weeds and learn more about a lot of players. Like when guys are going off the board in the 4th and even 5th rounds, I knew like 70 to 80% of them, not a ton about all of them, but just something about most of them because of that work over the last couple months. But anyway, I guess my question is, before we get into the draft, and like I said, our big general Bills takeaways on the draft and just going forward, how much of it did you actually get to watch? I know you're home there in New York, got the baby. Did you watch any of the draft at all over the course of?
Yeah, I watched the first round, most of the second and third round. I didn't watch any of it on Saturday, aside from watching it on Twitter unfold. And like by the time I have a rule of thumb with the draft, which is basically I find it first round's very, very important. Obviously the first round, you should get a guy that should start day one. That's kind of always been my feeling for the most part. And then like for the second and third round, it's like a guy that you hope plays, and then beyond that, it's like, why am I bothering? Like 4th, 5th, 6th rounder, like they're not going to do anything. Probably their rookie year. You might be lucky. Hey, it does happen. I'm not saying that it's completely.
Yeah, the Bills have been really good on day 3. You can make an argument they've been better on day 3 than day 2 over the last 5-6 years.
At times, like they do get guys. Yeah, it takes a little bit, but that's just kind of how I usually watch it. For the most part. And I get why people love it though. I wish I can love it as much.
Well, let's, before we kind of dive in, I'll throw it up on the screen for people watching on the video side, the draft class, of course, and we'll talk about this. The Bills traded down twice, so they didn't have a first round pick. They took a receiver with their first pick to start day 2 of the draft. Keon Coleman from Florida State came back with Cole Bishop later in round 2, a safety from Utah. On the 3rd round, a pick that they acquired in the trade with Kansas City. They took a defensive tackle, Dwayne Carter, running back Ray Davis from Kentucky, one in the 4th. In the 5th round, they had 3 picks. Well, they had 4, and they used 3 of them. Cedric Van Prank Granger, a center from Georgia. This guy's going to take a long time for people to be able to pronounce his name. It's Edu Fuan Ulofosio, a linebacker from Washington. I've already heard people just say the linebacker from Washington using his name for now. Javon Solomon, a prospect, a raw edge rusher prospect, also went in round 5. Round 6, Daquan Hardy, a defensive back and punt returner from Penn State. And then with their last pick, they took Tylan Grable, an offensive tackle, sort of a international pathway player, never even has played any college football. But anyway, you look at that draft, and like I said, we'll kind of dive in, Joe, more to the like the big takeaways, so to speak, from this draft. But I guess when you look at it, what are your I guess I'll say what are your initial thoughts, and then we'll kind of generally summarize it. But anything stand out for you? Because I know you are a guy who let's set the table too. By the way, you're a guy who is very much team wide receiver. You're on wide receiver train. You are a guy who has been very vocal against the Bills adding defensive linemen, especially in the first half of the draft, at least anyway, I'm sure. You look at these first 4 picks, 3 of the 4 are not. I mean, they took 1 defensive lineman, 2 offensive guys, 2 skill players on the offensive side, and a safety, and then, like I said, a defensive tackle, and then a bunch of beef after that. Anyway, I don't know, anything kind of stand out to you? Maybe not in terms of the player. I'm sure you don't know much about them right now, but just about what the Bills did. What are your general thoughts right now?
I thought it was, looking at it, I'm kind of like, wow, they drafted 10 players. That feels like a lot, for them. Because usually every year Brandon Beane is trading up. So if he's trading up, he's using picks to get into the back into the first round or move up. He didn't really do that this year. He traded back. I know he didn't really get, I think he got an additional pick in one of the trade downs, but it seemed like they were just moving up for the most part. But it's your typical complimentary football draft board, for the most part. They got some guys. They got, guys who you think could play right away. Cole Bishop, I think, could play right away, possibly. I know he's got to leapfrog 2 veterans, but those 2 veterans we haven't really seen play here. at all. So we don't know if, he'll probably get moved into at some point.
Sure.
We know for Carter, we know the Bills love to run the defensive line rotation of doom, which is like 15 defensive linemen, I think. Might be 10, 8, I don't know. But they're good. If you're a defensive lineman, you're getting on the field at some point in this year. So you got the Ray Davis is kind of an interesting thing. He's, from what I read, he's like a big back, a bruising type.
Great story too. Sure.
Yeah, they got like everyone was raving about how big of a character he was in terms of his backstory.
Well,
But he's a back that's a load to bring down, which I think is pretty good, because you think of, if you want that the thunder lightning approach, Cook is more of a dasher, gets down the field quick. This guy's going to be your bruiser, possibly, but obviously they have, I don't even know who was their second running back before.
It was Ty Johnson.
Yeah,
and Ray Davis doesn't have like breakaway speed, but man, he's good out of the backfield. He's done really good catching screens, bubble screens. He had 21 touchdowns last year, including 7 touchdown receptions. So to your point, is he going to start? No. But fourth round, later fourth round, he's going to play. There's going to be a role. He could be Damian Harris. I look at him and I say, this could be your Damian Harris before Damian Harris got hurt last year.
And they're changing it up a little bit, because usually the last couple of years they've had it to where they have that veteran running back behind Singletary or Cook. They're going for a youth, which, I kind of had a backhanded comment. I was like, oh God, another running back. And it's fine. It was the fourth round. And I just don't like drafting running backs until like at least the 5th, 6th round. But whatever. It is what it is. I'm not going to die on that hill. Van Prong Granger, whatever his name. He's got like a porno star name. Cedric Van Prang Granger. It's like a porn star name. I don't know. Maybe I watched too much porn.
People are raving about this pick.
Yeah, everyone is. Like everyone
picks of one of the potential mid-round steals of the draft.
A lot of people like him at
start at center. Not now, but he could become a starter at center. There's a lot of people complimenting this pick.
Yeah, I mean, and I think when you get someone that's from from Georgia, this is a college team that's always in the Final Four, it feels like, for college football. I think it always raises an eyebrow, like, ooh, this sounds good. But like I saw a lot of mockers had him as possibly one of the best centers in the draft. So
he was 3rd or 4th best center on a lot of boards.
And they do have some. We don't know what's going to happen at center after this year. They're making, Mitch Morse is gone. They're moving Connor McGovern over there, and we'll see how that works. But hey, we'll see what happens. Now we may as well go to Keon Coleman. Like, that's kind of the big, that's what I wanted. I just was like, give me a wide receiver, any wide receiver. And, they got a guy who I think a lot of people, I could be wrong here, I didn't follow it as much as you. There wasn't much hype about him coming into this draft from like the Bills wide receiver train in terms of that,
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're not. Well, you're not wrong, because there was a lot of talk about Keon Coleman before this draft. And look, there might be some revisionist history. And with fans, I certainly understand it. Look, at the end of the day, Joe, when you're a fan of a football team, if this guy comes on your team, whether you liked him or not before he got here, you like him when he gets there. That's what being a fan is, right? So I get the fan part of it. Let's just put it this way. He was not a popular choice. Like, when you looked at mock drafts, or you would even see on Twitter, and I know I saw plenty of it, if you could have one receiver you don't want the Bills to take, there was quite a few people who said Keon Coleman, just because he's not perceived as being fast anyway. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I told you before the show, let's not interrupt each other so much, and then bam, 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 I'm interrupting you. But anyway, yeah, he was well known, but I don't think he was the popular choice for a lot of Bills fans.
I would assume he probably wasn't, because I remember this conversation you and I had before, and I think you were right. We talked a lot about, like, the Bills seem to like smaller wide receivers, during, like, not like they didn't want giants like Kelvin Benjamin. And I think that's probably why this guy wasn't as popular, because people probably goes, oh, he's a big dude. They don't like big dudes. Well, they like big dudes now. So it's, I kind of looked at him and thought of like Kelvin, and I'm not talking Kelvin Benjamin, the crappy one that we got. I'm talking like the Carolina one, who wasn't bad at all. But they seemed to wanted a bigger target, and allegedly they said Josh Allen wanted him and called him. And when you get the Don, that's what Josh Allen is. He's like the Don of the free Bills. He's like, I want this guy. They're like, whatever you want. Dawson Knox extended, whatever you want, buddy. And fine. And I think overall, it's what they typically were gonna like. If you were to tell me what do you think they will do, that draft board, like those 10 picks are what I would think they would have done, which is it's a sprinkle here of some wide receiver help. It's more depth to the defense. I will still maintain that I do feel they care more about the defense than they do the offense. I'll say that till the day until they show me otherwise. They just
two of their first 3 picks were defensive guys who will contribute. Immediately. They should.
Yeah, they should. And it's this weekend. I kind of felt I was kind of pissed off a little bit. I wasn't that pissed off. I was just kind of like, wow, like so much for this. They're going to look for explosive offensive players. Like that was either a smokescreen or whatever.
A smokescreen. Brandon Beane was. You think the smokescreen might be we might trade up, we might trade down. The smokescreen was that they were looking for, really fast, explosive players that they were talking about a lot during this process because he's not that guy. He's got a lot of good skills. I mean, he brings plenty to the table, dude. But
it is. I think this weekend was I'm not going to hope for an offensive doom anymore. I've been talking about it on this podcast for 3 years.
Yeah,
this was the time to do it. And I thought, like, hey, this is when you do it now because you're really thin at wide receiving core. And look, I don't think anyone, unless they traded up for one of the 3 best wide receivers in the draft, whatever they did at 28, even if they got a wide receiver, it probably is not going to help them win game. Like, they're not going to go from 10 wins to 12 wins, in terms of, like, I think as of now, in terms of this year coming up, maybe in a year or two, we'll talk differently. But it just, I was hoping for.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. What else? What do you think schematically, Joe? All right, so they take a big receiver to start round 2. They trade down. You don't know a lot about Keon Coleman. You don't know a lot about Xavier Worthy. What you do know about Xavier Worthy is he is lightning quick.
He's fast. Yeah,
and he's very, very small. He's only like 165 pounds. The Bills are on the clock. Kansas City moved up to trade with him. Do you have a problem with them trading down with Kansas City? Because the thought, Brandon Beane, as he explained, if they keep pick 28, and they don't take Xavier Worthy, Kansas City could just move up to 29 and go get him anyway. So they got a 3rd round pick for him. But anyway, schematically in your mind, without knowing much about either player, would you rather have that big, aggressive, I could go up and get a 50-50 ball, I'm a big body willing blocker like Keon Coleman, or do you want a guy who is not strong to get out physical on the line, but a guy who will scare the living shit out of you with his blazing speed that you got to absolutely respect. The prototype receiver. Huh?
Could I say both?
You want to both? You can because that's fair.
Because look, they didn't have anyone. Like they don't. I mean, look, they got Shakir. Fine, okay. Like he had a nice, 2 months. I would have took both. If Stephon Diggs was still here, I probably would have wanted the over the top worthy guy. Give me a deep threat guy. Mm-hmm. Like, give me a fast guy. I probably would take that. But because they had no one really there, I would take either one. To go back to the Chiefs thing, I know a lot of people are upset about them trading with the Chiefs. I get that. It might be hard because this is going to be like, this draft was so hyped when it came to wide receivers. It resembled the 2018 draft with the quarterbacks, with everyone I want this guy, I want that guy, I want this guy, don't get that guy, etc. And after that 2018 draft, I remember everyone was watching all the quarterbacks, seeing how they did, like how Baker Mayfield did and how Darnold and Rosen. And thank goodness Rosen kind of no offense to him, but he fizzled out really quickly. So there was no, man, we should have got him. But I remember the 2017 draft when they could have had Mahomes and Watson, and everyone, it was like the fear bunker of 4 quarterbacks for both of them. That lasted for 3 years, basically, until 2020 when Josh Allen just blew up. And then I think that bunker just kind of, even though I think Mahomes is better, but it's Jordan versus Patrick Ewing at this point kind of thing, or whatever you want to call it.
Sure, I get it. Yeah.
But I think what we're going to have is that right now, where everyone's going to look at these wide receivers and see how they do in the league for the next year or two. And if Worthy, the only thing that I think would be annoying is obviously if Worthy blows up and he's awesome, then we're all just going to, the fear bunker is going to be created with Worthy at that point. But if you want to do it and you're like, yeah, go for it because we like someone else, that's fine. I don't know what the draft board looks like. Obviously, it's obvious they didn't feel much for Worthy. They didn't like him. They would have got him instead of Coleman. I think, but they must have liked Coleman more, and that's why they didn't draft Worthy. So I don't mind them going down and trading, back with the Chiefs. It is kind of one of those things where, while I don't mind it, I will keep an eye on it, that if he blows up, then I'm just going to be like, really, guys, you had to pass on this guy. And I think the frustration for me is just, the Chiefs, once again, like they've always chased after wide receivers. Even last year when they didn't have wide receivers, they won the Super Bowl. They weren't like, hey, we're going to stand pat and not have wide receivers at all. Who cares? We won the Super Bowl. No, they were like, no, we need more wide receivers.
Yeah, they got Hollywood Brown. They drafted one, and they moved up to get one in the first.
Because when you come from the Andy Reid tree of offense and passing is your first thing to do, you want as many weapons as possible. And I thought Sean McDermott, at the end of the year-end presser, he said that I'm from the Andy Reid tree, and we want to pass first. You look at this draft, and you look at the free agent class, and you look at getting rid of Diggs, it doesn't really feel like you're a pass-first offense right now, does it?
No. I let when it comes to the Bills, I think I let my emotions over the last couple of days of this draft get the better of me a little bit, because I had tunnel vision coming into this draft. I was one of those, you got to get 2 receiver guys. I mean, I really thought they were going to get 2 receivers. So I was locked and fixated completely on that. And also, and I am certainly willing, I'm not going to sit there and look for bad things to pick apart with Keon Coleman. I want him to succeed. I will root for him, and I will give him the benefit of the doubt. But he is not one of the first 7, maybe even 8 wide receivers that I wanted. So they only got 1 receiver, and it's not one of the guys that personally I wanted. And then for the next 3-4 rounds, all the way until it got to about round 6, when I realized this team just ain't going to take another receiver, every single pick I was instantly angry about, even if I liked the player. Like now, in a more calm state and having time to reflect, I'm like, pretty good draft, man. And again, you might, and we'll talk about the other players here in a few, but I want to give you a couple takeaways. And this is my biggest takeaway from this draft. And now it's obvious. Joe, I think how the Bills played last year and how they won down the stretch, proven that they could win without Stefon Diggs being a central part of this offense most of the time, at least anyway. I think that has played a very big role in their 2024 philosophy. Like, in my opinion, like Curtis Samuel is kind of what Diggs, or what they think he's going to be. It's kind of like what Stefon Diggs was like down the stretch last year. Now I'm talking about not the 100 catches in a season, Stefon Diggs, but Samuel could be like Diggs, like kind of down the stretch last year. And like Coleman is their Gabe Davis going forward. And you got Kincaid and Shakir and Cook and Knox. I think they feel, and I don't think, in fact, it's kind of obvious by their actions here, they feel like they don't need a true number one. I guess a bonus concern would be with that take, as far as I'm concerned, is it's thin. What happens if Shakir, Samuel, Coleman, any of them get hurt and they got to miss time? Just really thin. I mean, Matt Collins is not nothing, but I don't know. I think that's my big thing. My big takeaway is that how the season down the stretch last year played out, and they won without Stefon being a big part. They just said, all right, well, we lost Gabe, lost all of our receivers, basically. We got Samuel, and we drafted Coleman, and there's your Gabe, there's your Stefon, and we can spread the ball around and be unpredictable, yada, yada, yada. I think their mindset right now is, we don't need a number one anymore.
I think that's their mindset. And I think they also have a mindset of I think they're bringing back 12 personnel. I've been saying that for 2 months. I think we're going to get 2 tight end offense. I think they're going to want to run the ball more effectively. I think they want to balance more, which I hate, but that's what they're going to do.
No, it's definitely what they're doing.
That's what they're doing. And like, I'm as I said, I'm kind of defeated a little bit, where it's also, I'm out of the hope tank for offensive doom is, as I said, it's dead. It's gone. And like, this is my, okay, all right, you want to do it this way? Sure. You want to put all your eggs in one basket because you went 6-1 down the stretch, and you barely beat a crappy Chargers team. You barely beat Mac Jones, or was it Zeppo? I don't even know who was in the New England game when they were in Buffalo.
Sure, they won some games, not so
they
much.
Won.
They beat Miami on a punt return. The punt return was the big play of the game in the finale.
And a couple things. Look, they beat Miami, a team that everyone in Bill's Twitter laughs at and like jokes and says that they're terrible. Yet they barely beat them when Miami had like no one left on their roster. Like, so I'm supposed to like just act like we're like the top of the line over here. Like, I don't know. I think they're looking at how they finished a little bit. They're just ignoring the first half of this season. And the thing about like winning without Diggs, it's funny because I was arguing with someone on text, and they were talking about how, well, the difference between Brady and Dorsey was, Brady was spreading the ball around the field. And I'm like thinking to myself, and this is right after he bashed Diggs, like, oh, he wasn't very good down the stretch. It's like, well, if you're spreading the ball around the field, then of course Diggs is going to get as many balls if you're spreading it all over the place. It was weird. It was kind of like, let's give our flowers to Brady for spreading the ball around, but then we're going to give this doo-doo because he wasn't a part of it as much as he was before. You can't have it both ways. You can't crap on Diggs and then commend them for spreading the ball around the field more. You can't do it that way. That's kind of. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, you're not.
That feels a little bit. You're trying to have your cake and eat it at the same time, or whatever the slogan is. But I think overall, this is going to be. I think the Super Bowl window is closed for now.
Ooh.
I think the play. Hold on. Let me before you go. Ooh.
Well, I mean that's a pretty hot take. So go ahead, elaborate.
Okay, so look, since the last like 3-4 years, we have had this magical, ambiguous term as the window is open as long as Josh Allen is there. What window? Are we talking about the Super Bowl window? Are we talking about the playoff window? Are we talking about the division title window? What window? Because there's a lot of different windows. Okay, because if this is the case, then the Chargers have a window right now because Justin Herbert's really good, right? He's not terrible, but they're not winning the Super Bowl. And I'm not saying the Bills are like in the same stratosphere as they are. They're not. They're better than the Chargers are right now. I think the division window is open. I don't think there's a Super Bowl window as of right now. I don't know how you can come here and say that to me right now. They are across the board. They are not better. I don't think they're better at wide receiver. I don't think they're better in the secondary. I think there might be better at linebacker because Matt Milano might come back, but if Matt Milano gets hurt again, or who knows what his status is, he's not a 25-year-old anymore. Their defensive line might be a little bit better, but it really depends on Von Miller. If Von Miller comes back and he's great, I think the offensive line's a little bit regressed. Mitch Morse is gone. You're going to tell me like, oh, they're better now because Mitch Morse is gone? Come on, give me a break. And I just think that I don't think they're in that top. I don't think they're in the top 4 of the AFC right now. I think Cleveland's a little bit better than them because they have a better defense. I think they have like some really good skill guys. And if Deshaun Watson, who did come on before he got hurt, I think they're a little bit better than them. I'm sorry. It's just they're still look. They're not going to be terrible.
I don't think you're being outlandish.
Those Super Bowl odds were before the season. They were like the 3rd or 4th to win the Super Bowl. That's how it's been the last couple of years. I think it's gone. I think they're going to be in that 6th, 7th, 8th. At least. That's just how it is. Sorry. And you can cold take me for this year. And look, here's the thing. This is what I think is the big picture. This is going to be the take their medicine season because of what happened with Diggs, and what happened with the cap was real. I'll put it in my back. I'll take it. I take my medicine, take it in the ass. I was wrong about that. It was real. And I think this is the take it in the ass year for them, or take their medicine year. Not to say taking in the ass is bad. Like, if you like that, good for you. But it's your take your medicine year. We'll just say it. Mm-hmm. And then I think next year will be we have all this cap room. We have all these draft picks, this draft capital. Let's see what they do there. But the big thing, and then we'll go to break. I'll call the break for you. I thought you were going to go to break because we're at 28 minutes. I'm just helping you produce there, buddy. But I think the big thing for next year, when they got the capital, they got the cap, is what are they going to do? Do they go out and maybe they do my dream of an offensive doom? I don't believe it, but I think next year they'll make some moves and be really aggressive in free agency and really redo a lot of things. Because right now I think this is a transition year for them. It's a bit of a reset.
Let me since you brought it up, let me take a quick break, and then real quick on the other side, I'm going to come back and I got a couple thoughts on what you just said. All right, I am back here with Joe from Queens. That last segment before going right to the break, that was kind of like I say this all the time. It was like a wrestling match, and you're going to get all that offense in and no sell until you got all those takes off, which I agree actually with some of them. I do think I'll agree with you this much, Joe. For the first time in probably 3 years, I think when you look at the Super Bowl favorites in this conference, and I haven't bothered to look, so I don't know what the odds are as we record this here in late April. I don't think the Bills are one of the top 3, maybe even 4 teams in the AFC, which again, they have been, if not the favorite, one of the 2 favorites in this conference for at least the last 3 or 4 years. I don't think this team is as good on paper right now as it is. Certainly not on paper as it was a year ago. I agree with you fully about the wide receiver position. I would say there's question marks at offensive line. McGovern has played center. Mitch Morse was all right last year.
I thought he was good. I don't think he was all right. He was good. Come on. Give him his flowers.
It remains
he was good.
I'm not going to chalk off the offensive line as being worse than it was last year. You could also say O'Cyrus Torrence is going to be better because he has a year more experience. Spencer Brown stayed healthy.
They said that about John Miller too.
Anyways, no, he was good. O'Cyrus Torrence ain't John Miller, man. But anyway, offensive line, I'll say is a question mark. I tend to disagree with you some with the defense. I think if Matt Milano's back, that is a huge lift, obviously. But
absolutely, also, you're right.
Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, and God damn, I love those dudes, man. I'm one of those put them on the wall together type guys. I still feel that way someday down the road. Well, there is no wall anymore. You get what I'm saying. Anyway, borderline washed up, especially Micah Hyde. They were just not good last year. Mike Edwards, Taylor Rapp, and a second-round rookie Cole Bishop, that might be an upgrade. Defensive line, losing Leonard Floyd hurts, and you got to trust Von Miller. I hate that. Anyway, my point is this, Joe. There's question marks for sure. I don't think the Super Bowl window is closed. I don't think they're a favorite. I think they're trying to do the best they can this year and hope to catch lightning in a bottle at the right time, maybe, and make a run with a great quarterback and some good young ascending players. But yeah, they're not going to be on paper as good as they were last year. One point about Diggs. This is where I've changed my mind, actually. Now I agree with you. This is after fighting with you on Facebook for, not fighting, but we were certainly disagreeing. Look, I thought at the time, all right, let me admit something to you. In hindsight, had I known then what I know now, I would have kept Stephon Diggs for one more year because I supported the trade at the time. Again, you and I have had many colorful conversations about this, but I thought that they were going to do more post Stephon Diggs trade than just add a rookie in the second round. I'm like, all right, they trade Stephon, they get a 2025 second. Maybe they're going to go into this draft and they're going to load up, man. They're going to give up a first, that second that they got for Diggs, something else, and they're going to try to go get Rome Odunze, and then bam, man, you got your legit, true, scary number 1 with your top pick last year, Kincaid. What a hell of a weapon that'll be. Or even maybe a smaller trade-up. They're going to go up and get Brian Thomas Jr., who I think was the last of the 4 surefire first-round wide receivers. They didn't do any of that. All they did is add a second-round rookie since trading Stephon Diggs. I thought maybe they're going to trade for Brandon Ayuk. I thought maybe they were going to trade for Deebo Samuel, even though I wouldn't have loved that. Maybe Cortland Sutton, one of those guys. Brandon Beane made it pretty damn clear. And he said the cap, and the draft's over, so this is not smoke season now. The cap is the cap. Bills ain't making that trade. So had I known that this is all they were going to do is just draft a second-round rookie and keep that asset for next year and make a trade in this draft for another asset for next year, I don't know, dude. I don't like that because right now I look at the Bills receivers and this is like a bottom 3rd unit in the NFL. There's not a good receiving unit not right now anyway, man. Curtis Samuel is your most proven receiver. When has he ever been a number 1 anywhere? Ever?
Yeah, it's not great, Bob, as the meme says. No. I think a lot next year is going to be riding on Dawson Knox and Kincaid. That's why I think, the 12 personnel's coming back. And I think I talked last year at this time that if you wanted to run the ideal situation would be like if Knox and Kincaid were like Gronk and Aaron Hernandez back in like the early 2010s, like 2010, 2012, whatever it was, where they like combined for like, 150 catches or whatever they had. Like that would be the ideal situation where you're like, hey, you know what? We don't really need that many wide receivers, but I don't think that's going to happen. Dawson Knox, they haven't proven they can play together. Kincaid had a nice rookie year. I think
he had a great rookie year.
It was nice.
Okay, he had a great rookie year.
Pat, he had less than 10 yards per catch.
That's not some catches, dude, as a rookie.
Okay,
91 targets. He's their number one guy. Anyway.
Okay. He had a nice rookie year. I don't think it was great. It was nice. Okay. Like he didn't really do anything the first month. It got better with Brady. Fine. Like he was good. Okay. I don't think he was great. He was good. But he needs to be better. Like you're going to be the number one target now? Okay. Then go get those Chris Kelsey numbers then, buddy. Go get him. Like,
Travis,
you know, go.
Did
I say Chris Kelsey? Sorry.
Who was Chris Kelsey? Remember him? Wasn't he the Bills defensive end who would never get cut? No matter what, every year.
No, they never. They always loved him because he was a quote machine, and I think Ralph loved him. I always made a joke that he had like pictures, like naked pictures of Ralph, because they kept extending him year after year. Yeah, he wasn't very. He probably would have been one of those annoying, polarizing guys if Twitter was around for most of it. I'm sure the film guys would have loved him because he was one of those guys where don't look at the stats. It's what he does in the field. He steals the edge. I couldn't stand him either. I hated him.
Would you say the biggest surprise of this draft, because we're kind of talking like draft takeaways here too, is that they didn't aggressively, not only did they not aggressively move up, that they traded down twice in the first round, which I'm going to be honest with you. If you weren't going to be able to get up and get Brian Thomas Jr., I actually liked those trades. I liked getting that day 3 pick. Oh, I'm sorry, a day 2 pick in the 3rd round. I have no problem with that. But then they traded down again in the 5th. They gave up a 5th this year to get a 4th next year. Again, it's not a bad trade, but it's like, what is that doing to help this year's roster? Like, for me, the biggest surprise of the draft, besides drafting Keon Coleman over Troy Franklin and a bunch of Lynn Plok, there's a bunch of receivers I would have rather had, quite frankly. But to me, the biggest surprise is all the assets that they had going into this draft, which makes me think they're not trying to win this year. They certainly, you can't sit there and tell me you are not you, anybody. They are not all in. They're definitely not all in right now. All the assets for next year they kept. And they're looking really good for next year. Cap, draft assets. But it's like this year, it's like, we want you to be good and maybe we can get lucky. I don't know. For me, the biggest surprise of the draft, besides drafting Coleman, was that they didn't move up once. All those picks, we were all saying, well, they're going to make 10, 11 picks. Well, they did. They didn't move up once. In fact, they got rid of a pick. Still picked 10 times.
Like I said, I think they want to take their medicine a little bit this year. And as I said, I think it could be a little bit of that. It could just be that, maybe they view it like the previous 3 years. Like they try to have like a really dynamic passing game in their mind. Like, oh, we gave Diggs a lot of money, and then we had Gabe Davis, and we tried to pass our way into at will, and it didn't work. Maybe and instead of doubling down, which is what I wanted to, which was keep adding more weapons, they might just be like, hey, we don't really need that. Let's go and put more assets into defense, and let's stock up the depth chart for defense. Sure. And they might be just in that realm. I've talked about this before, where they want to build this team like the Carolina Panthers of the Cam Newton era, which was a lot of depth in defense. You got the 2 tight end offense. You got your multiple running backs, and you got 1.5 good wide receivers, maybe. And that feels like we're year 7, 8 into the McBean, and it's kind of been the same. There has not been a giant. Oh man, they changed it up in terms of like all their assets are on wide receivers, or I think they want their defense, and I don't agree with that. I've said it before, and there's nothing I can do. And like I said, this is more of a okay. Like,
would you feel different if they didn't trade Diggs? Like if they could have found a way to keep him, because now you got Diggs, you got Samuel, you got Coleman, you got Shakir, you got Kincaid. That kind of like feels to me like a game changer. And that's got to have some kind of insight too, because they did not save a penny. It cost them $3 million more to trade them than it did to keep them for this season. And Absolutely. It's like, God, that must have been, without placing blame, we've already all been down that road before, who we think, whatever. That doesn't even matter. But the point being, man, there must have been some shit going on in that locker room for them to trade him and then only draft a guy in the second round and do nothing else. Because this offense with Stephon Diggs to me today just feels a hell of a lot more dynamic. It's not like the dude is off a cliff and he sucks. He's still a hell of a receiver. Man.
I would have been 100% in. I would have been like, oh, you want to trade down and you want to get like
you just drafted Gabe Davis's guy, right?
Sure. You want a little bit, you want an heir apparent. That was to me the key. You wanted an heir apparent to Stephon Diggs. So when Stephon Diggs, when you eventually broke up, you'd have a guy ready to take over. That's why the trade really annoyed the hell out of me, because they just were just like, we're done. And it was just like, you guys realize you don't have like, it's easy for the Chiefs to trade to, Hill to Miami because they already had Kelsey there. We don't have Kelsey right now. I mean, maybe Dalton Kincaid becomes that guy. We'll see. But like, if you don't have that exceptional pass catching weapon there, you don't make that trade. I don't care. Like, we're 3 weeks removed. We still don't have any sort of access or stories of like, that made me go, yeah, you had to do it.
They're there. We're just not hearing about them, but
whatever they are. They
there.
haven't come out, and my DMs haven't said anything. But
it's funny because 3 weeks ago you would be like, "That's a horrible trade. He should never have done that." And my mindset was, "Well, I think it is a good trade because I truly
you believe they were
going to do so. I thought it was a chess move." Waiting to set up the next chess piece. I did not think that Keon Coleman was going to be the one and the only chess piece, which, maybe come June 1st, they go sign Odell Beckham Jr. Then you and I are having a completely conversation.
Yeah, and that could very much happen. They've done that before where they wait till, May, June, and that's where they got Floyd last year. Yeah. They got him after, and hey, they could do that. Right. I don't think it's going to happen. I really think you hit the nail on the head for that last 6 games of the season. I think they feel that they can win by doing more ball control. Josh Allen is not going to be, to me, a break in case of emergency guy. If you look at his numbers, like game by game last year. It wasn't like these 300-yard games. It wasn't. It was very manageable, like 220, 230. But his best games were against Miami, which happens all the time. And Miami, at the end of the year, their defense was done, and I think that was a big reason why they went really pass heavy in that game, because Miami had so many injuries, like they were screwed. And then the other game was against the Eagles, where he played really well in that game. I think it's going to be they want to create it to where it's not, the pressure isn't all on Allen. They want to put it on Cook. They want to do shorter passes, and that's it. And as you can see, I'm very excited about all that.
Sure.
Thrilled. Can't wait. Ball control. Get James Cook in the first round, people, in your fantasy draft. That's all I got to say.
I do want to get into a couple more takeaways as well. But yeah, it seems to me, I used to have some teams have the feature running back and some have a running back by committee. It just feels like the Bills' philosophy for 2024 is going to be weapon by committee. I'll say this, though. Look, if you're one of those people, and you and I are not, because I think we're on the same wavelength when it comes to, we both expected more post Diggs at wide receiver. We didn't get that, at least not yet anyway. But if you believe the philosophy that balance is good and yada, 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 and not let the fixation with one position overshadow what I do think was a pretty solid draft. Like I said, with Bishop, he's going to compete with Mike Edwards day one of camp. And even if he doesn't win that job, he's going to be utility knife. He'll get some looks in some dime defenses. He'll play some slot stuff. I know you're not a defensive tackle guy, but I got to be honest with you, Joe. I like Dwayne Carter. He's one of those guys that I actually did look into before this draft. To me, he's an instant backup to Ed Oliver, 3 tech. He's not going to start, but he's well-rounded. They're set there now for a few years. He can be better than Jordan Phillips. He can stay healthy. And I will say that the defensive depth last year, to me, after receiver, might have been the weakest part of this entire football team. After Ed, after DeQuan, they sucked. Man, Puna sucked. He didn't do anything. Laval Joseph, who you made fun of after the signing, he did nothing. Jordan Phillips got hurt all the time. Tim Settle, completely irrelevant. So to go get a guy in the 3rd round, Austin Johnson is an improvement over those guys, a free agent. Dwayne Williams is even a little bit better. I think they got a lot better at defensive tackle. I know you don't care much about it, but that depth is there, and it is improved over last year.
Well, I wonder how much Carter's going to play, though, because, again, with McDermott and rookies, they are Jekyll and Hyde. It's very hard. Look, Boogie Basham, AJ Epinesa, those guys did not play that much their rookie years. And obviously one guy couldn't play. The other guy kind of can, or he came on. But, like, they make you pay your dues a little bit on defense. Specific. Now, There are guys you could say, like, oh, hey, this, Christian Benford, he played, obviously, right away. Greg Rousseau played right away.
But I don't. They don't got a lot of bodies. I think he's going.
No, you're right. Well, they've added a couple of guys in free agency.
Sure, he'll compete with them. He'll compete,
but I don't know how much he's going to be there day one. Again, they're all over. I do not have a firm grasp on the rookies, especially on the defense. I just don't. I feel like they're going to be like, look, Terrell Bernard was a stud as a second-year guy. He didn't play at all this first year at all. Well, they were like, nope, you're not on the field at all.
For the end of a third round, I like Dwayne Carter a lot. I think he was a good pick and good leadership qualities, which I'm going to get into in a second. We talked a little bit about Ray Davis, man. He finds the end zone, tough runner, catches screens. He's a shitty pass blocker. They got to work on that, but he's going to contribute pretty soon. And again, a guy in the first 4 rounds, that's kind of what you want. We already talked about the center. We really don't even need to talk about the other guys in the back end. Although I will say a late pick, Daquan Hardy from Penn State. He could be a legit backup, quality backup to Teron Johnson, and he's a really good punt returner. But the other thing might take away with this class, and maybe this goes back to, I think, 2 things. Number one, whatever happened with Stefon Diggs to get to the point where they had to get rid of him for whatever reason it may be, and also losing Mitch and Trey White and Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. A lot of leaders on that team gone, older veteran leaders. The guys that they were drafting, and this was pretty damn noticeable, captains on their team, like Bishop, Carter, Van Granger. These guys were all multiple-year captains at the school that they came out of. Again, they lost a lot of leaders, so maybe they're working on creating a new culture with this team right now. And new leaders, well, they got leaders now too, but you know what I'm saying? It just feels like maybe the character and leadership in the locker room, I feel like maybe this meant more this draft because of what they lost this offseason.
It's possible. And they definitely do care about those intangibles. They care about you being a leader, locker room guy, feeding the poor, all that stuff. They love all that stuff. So I don't think being a captain is going to hurt your chances of making this team. But they definitely care about that sort of stuff. It's obvious.
Sure.
Trust the process, culture, iron sharpens iron, all those McDermott slogans that he's used over the years. Yeah, they definitely dig all that stuff.
You are convinced. You tell me this all the time. You are convinced that Sean McDermott is and I don't disagree with a lot of it. So we're clear, much of what you say, I actually agree with this. But Sean McDermott, if he's not calling the shots with these picks, he's got a very, very, very big influence.
He's got a heavy hand
on these picks. You
got a heavy hand
for sure.
Yeah, I definitely believe that. And look, it's not like out of the ordinary. Like a lot of teams work that way. Heck, Dick Jauron had a say, and he was terrible. Like, he allegedly wanted Aaron Maben, because he felt he was going to master his cover 2 defense because he was small and fast, whatever. But yeah, I definitely feel like what McDermott wants is it's going to be his way. I think. I mean, think about this. Elam is a guy they drafted in the first round, and he's not playing at all. But then actually, I might be cutting myself short there, because if he had his choice, then he wouldn't have drafted him. But who knows? I think there is. It's give and take, but I definitely do feel that McDermott wants his defense. He cares about his defense. It's why he's in charge of his defense. Mm-hmm. It's why I still feel that a big part of why the offense, in my opinion, started running the football more and was more into controlling the offense, especially in that Chiefs game in the finale, was he wanted to keep his defense off the field. He cares about that defense. That is his baby. And I don't agree with that. As I said, this has been a very, okay, like, I'm done. Like, I can't, I can yell at rooftops, have a mental breakdown and yell like, and I probably will see what happens this season, but I think this is what they want to do. I think they care more about, they're all about their defense. They want to control the ball, and I think they don't want to make as many mistakes. I remember the last thing, and my apologies.
Go ahead.
Towards the end of the year-end presser, someone asked McDermott about Josh Allen's improvement this year from the first half of the season to the second half. And the first thing he said was turnovers. There you go. Like, he does not want Josh Allen to throw the ball. He doesn't want him to turn the ball over. That, to me, is what a defensive guy wants. He doesn't want to shorten the field for his defense. Sure. And I think that's what they want to do. And look, maybe the balance is what they need. I don't agree with it. I think, everyone wants to point to the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl last year as a reason why you don't need wide receivers. And it's kind of funny because the Chiefs almost lost. Like, if the Chiefs lose and the 49ers win, then what are we saying? 49ers have like studs everywhere on that offense. Everywhere. It's a freaking all-pro team. Then I'm sitting here going, why can't you be like San Fran? Or the year before, if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown are your 1A, 1B, who are both of them are making a ridiculous amount of money because they were awesome. They picked them high. Sure. And then the year before, my apologies, one more thing. The year before, if the Bengals beat the Rams, then you're talking like, look at how deep their wide receiving core is with Higgins and Jamar Chase, and then you got Boyd as the third guy. But you lose, and then you can kind of twist the narrative a little bit and go, well, you don't really need all these wide receivers. You need defensive lineman help, and it changes. But I still feel like in this league, the first 15 draft picks this year, Pat, were all offense. Why? Because, again, the league doesn't want defense. The league they just changed the rule where you can't do a hip tackle, which I don't even know what that is. And I saw it and I'm like, that's illegal now. And I think teams know that. And I think the Bills are not one of those teams because their coach wants defense. He loves it.
You got to, I agree with you in terms of Sean McDermott and his philosophy. It's always felt that way to me. Like, Josh Allen and Sean McDermott don't feel like a marriage made in heaven. Like, a Josh Allen type of quarterback belongs with a Andy Reid type of coach. That's the way it's always felt for me. Where Sean McDermott type of quarterback would be like I can't think of anybody recent years, but like saying Alex Smith would be like the perfect type of Sean McDermott quarterback. Sure. Where I think you're wrong, though, or I think we get skewed because, again, both of us were on the same page. Big time receiver in this draft. Go trade up and go get one of the big ones, or at least double dip at wide receiver. They didn't do that. I think we're being skewed, though, because when it comes to Sean McDermott, and I got kind of ratioed on Twitter, and to be fair, this is one of those instances I feel like I deserved it because it was a bad take. I was complaining about Sean McDermott having too much say in these picks. And Joe, you go back and you look. Now, 2021 is where I think the foundation for saying what they like to do has been rooted, because of 2021, they took Rizzo and Boogie Basham, and then they took Spencer Brown and Tommy Doyle. First four picks, all fucking big fat guys, right? Mm. But this year, first four picks, they went receiver, safety, defensive tackle they did take, and a running back. Year before last year, tight end, they traded up to go get a tight end. So a tight end, an offensive lineman, a linebacker, and a wide receiver. First four picks last year. And then in 2022, they traded up to get a corner, a running back, a linebacker, and a receiver. So there hasn't been a lot of defensive line. Now, they've spent money on these guys, Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to the draft, the Bills I think they're doing a good job of just adding good talent at various positions.
But Pat, it took them, 8 years to get a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds. That's a lot. Okay, that's a long time.
And I know you know what, people come back at you and say they're not wrong about Diggs. They did give up a first rounder when they traded for him.
But they could have easily added more.
I agree with the point.
And
top 3 every year, top 3 rounds every year, they should take a receiver.
And I'll say this: look, the first draft, allegedly the 2017 draft, Sean McDermott was the one in charge of it, and that's when Whaley and Manos were there. And that's allegedly. If you ask Jim Manos, he says no, it was more of a collective grouping. But and I think sometimes you feel that maybe that's why he has a bigger say, because he was in charge of a draft once. It was actually the best, allegedly, quote unquote, and that was probably their best draft they ever had outside of the Josh. Yeah, it was a great draft, and outside of, and then they haven't, they've had okay draft. Obviously, Josh Allen's been great. He's the best draft pick they've had in God knows how long. But
it's the weirdest draft ever, isn't it? Think about this, Joe. Just, I know this is kind of, I'm cutting you off and going off what you're saying, but I just can't get that draft out of my head because you look at the bad and they traded a chance to get Pat Mahomes. That's unforgivable, right? They also, Zay Jones was a bust, and they drafted Nate Peterman, who's one of the biggest laughing stock maybe in Bills history.
Yeah.
But they also drafted Trey White, Matt Milano, and Deion Dawkins all in that same draft too. What a wild, eventful 2017. Completely unrelated to what you were getting at.
Yeah, and they got that extra pick that I think ended up being Tremaine Edmonds the next year or something like that. So
yep.
But I don't know. I still believe I can't get past like how they look. They used 4 draft picks in a row within the first and second round from 2019 to 2021 on defensive line. That was Ed Oliver, AJ Epinesa, Boogie Basham, and Rousseau. Or I reversed that. Yeah. But you got what I mean. And I think that once you do that, and it's like you could have had offense, you could have had wide receivers there. And I think I can't get off of that. And I think that's why, some people like on Twitter on Thursday night were like, very, I know we talked about this on the bat line or Facebook about being like kind of condescending to people who were upset they didn't get a wide receiver. And it wasn't about this year. It was about like the last 6-7 years where you're just like, get this poor guy some help, guys. Like, they should have gotten help after 13 seconds when Cole Beasley, it was obvious he was done. And they didn't, they were just like, we're just going to roll with Gabe and Stephon Diggs. And Gabe was inconsistent. We've talked about it. Stephon Diggs is by himself, and then we had to like pray to God like their 5th round rookie was going to be good, or we had to pray that Isaiah McKenzie was going to be good, or Trent Sherfield was going to be good. And like the frustration that night wasn't about that night; it was about the last 5-6 years. About get some wide receivers, and then they got one. That's it, and I still think there are people who are probably still pissed off. And I'm at the point of maybe a little of apathy, or I'm just tired of being annoyed at them, and there's nothing I can do. They're not going to listen to me anymore. Well, they never did, but it's fine. Don't listen to me. But I think, as I said, I think they want to control the ball. And I think the biggest thing is what's going to happen in 2025 when they have all this capital, all this stuff. Are they going to go and try to find the next Stephon Diggs, whether it's via trade or trading up in the draft or whatever the case may be, or are they going to go out and go, man, we need another edge. Von Miller's off our books. We need another edge guy. We need 2 edge guys.
I was surprised. I honestly was half expecting the Bills to take an edge rusher in this first round. Like Chop Robinson, who went to Miami at 22, had he been around at 28, I think that might have been really interesting, because we know this much, Joe. We know now the Bills weren't that in love with any receiver at 28 because they traded down not once, but twice. If a defensive edge would have been there at 28, oh my God, that would have been interesting, because it could have happened. Let me tell you one thing I do love about Keon Coleman. We're winding down here. Want to talk about a good draft takeaway that I like about this?
He likes snacks like you.
He does like snacks, and I have been good with no snacks.
You love snacks.
No, this is my favorite thing. I hit on this when I did a live reaction show right after the draft. There's one thing I'm going to like about Keon Coleman. So many years, we've been talking about like the running back train's been the thing for the last couple of years. Like Travis Etienne, I remember Najee Harris was a guy. Who's the guy from the Jets? Breece Hall. Yeah. It was like, man, the Bills should draft this guy and yada, yada, yada. Never got the chance because he was gone before the Bills got on the clock. You look at Keon Coleman. All right, so the first top 3 we knew were going to be gone. And then Brian Thomas, if he didn't trade up, he was going to be gone. And he was. You get to 28. You could add any of the other receivers you wanted. Any of them. You trade down. You get to 32. You could add Xavier Ward there at 28. 32, you could take Xavier Legette. You trade down. You don't. Then you go into day 2, and you could have literally any receiver in this draft left. Any of them. And you took Keon Coleman. So we won't be saying, we will be comparing, how do you take Keon Coleman? Jalen Polk is crushing it for New England. My point is this. They cannot come at you with an excuse, well, that guy was gone. Because they had any day 2 or forward on guy they wanted. Or they could have had Worthy or Legette. So what I'm saying is there's not going to be any what ifs when it comes to Keon Coleman. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's their guy. and you can't. They didn't settle for him because Jalen Polk or Baker or Ricky Pearsall or somebody else, Xavier Legette, those guys were all gone. They could have had any of them after the top 4, and they chose Coleman. I don't know if that means anything to you, but to me, I kind of like that because there ain't going to be no excuse. If Keon Coleman doesn't work out, this is on Brandon Beane and nobody else, or in his staff.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting how much he plays. That to me is going to be the interesting part. Because like they could, as I said, if they go to tight end offense, they can just go with Shakir and Samuel, and then they bring on Coleman here and there. But again, I don't know. Like I've been telling you, they're rookies. The annoying part is they don't really draft that many offensive rookies, but the guys they've drafted, they sit a little bit. Like Cook sat. The plan when Josh Allen was going back way back was for Josh Allen to sit, but because Nate Peterman was so awful, like they had no choice but to go to him. But like, Shakir didn't do much his rookie year. James Cook didn't do much his rookie year. Dawson Knox really didn't do much, and people loved him, and he was like the second tight end. Like the only guy who was an immediate impact rookie is Kincaid. Like in terms of like a skill guy, but again, they haven't drafted that many skill guys, in terms of like since like 2019. Or you know what? They did have Singletary. They ran him right away when he was a rookie.
Yeah,
he was actually pretty good.
He was pretty good.
But it's a mixed bag. Again, it's a mixed bag of, is this guy going to play or he's going to pay his dues?
I think I saw a stat 5 straight years a rookie receiver has had at least 1,000 yards receiving.
Yeah,
he'll play how much? I don't know. I don't think he's going to be handing anything. Do you think we're winding down now? We don't even talk about him. I actually did not an entire episode, but it was a title of an episode I did with Anthony Marino. We've been talking for an hour. I might have mentioned his name once.
Special teams guy. I already forgot his name. Go ahead.
Matt Collins. Dude had almost 700 yards 2 years ago with the Raiders. He didn't play. He didn't get really a chance any run last year with Atlanta. As a wide receiver 4, you could do worse than him. I said it when they signed him. I think Matt Collins is better than Trent Sherfield. So,
that's not saying much, man. I mean, Trent Sherfield was pretty bad.
It's not, but I'm saying he's capable of having some contributions. Like, let's say Keon Coleman doesn't start and they want to run some bigger formations. Matt Collins is a good blocker. He might be out there and do some Gabe Davis shit maybe early on as Keon Coleman gets some.
If you want to drink the Joe Brady Kool-Aid, it's that this is going to be an offense that's going to spread the ball all over the field, and that. I don't. It says it's mean for me to say that, but subpar guys or medium guys are going to be fine. Like if you're having a team, and the best example I can think of is like Tom Brady's career. In a nutshell, Tom Brady really only had like one number 1 wide receiver. It was Randy Moss through most of his career. He had Chris Hogan, Amendola. Wes Welker was good, but like he wasn't. I didn't view him
Edelman, they had good receivers, but not like.
But it wasn't like he didn't have like.
He didn't have Jamar Chase.
Yes, he did with Randy Moss. That was it. And they spread the ball because it was always a nightmare to draft Patriot wide receivers because one day a guy was great, the next day you didn't see it or hear him because it went to someone else.
Sure.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
It was more of a story time. I was actually thinking about Randy Moss and like how similar Randy Moss and Stephon Diggs' exits were in New England, where like it felt like they broke up and they drifted apart, and it was kind of like the same thing. I felt a little bit, and even the T.O. I was thinking about T.O. and Tony Romo was kind of like Diggs and Allen, where they were like the best friends in the world, and all of a sudden it just blew up and they just didn't like each other anymore. But it popped in my head. But go ahead.
Let me ask you. We'll end with this. Your single biggest, now that the draft's over, your single biggest takeaway about either the draft or this team immediately after the draft, and this might be something that you've already hit on today. So if it is, I guess you'll be repeating yourself. But if somebody were to say, "Hey, Joe, right now the draft's over. What's your single biggest either Bills draft takeaway or just general takeaway right now with this football team?" Because we kept hearing about the draft. Well, they still got the draft, get some players. Well, now they got some players. They might get a guy after June 1st. Probably nobody crazy. They're not making a crazy trade. So this pretty much, for the most part, is what you're going to get with the 2024 Bills. What's your single biggest takeaway as we wrap up here?
it's going to be a transition season where I think they're going to be a 10-8. It's a 10 wins was hey, one fewer than last year, which I guess is called a transit. I don't have my expectations are lower this season than they've been since 2019, 2020.
Okay.
Like that's just how it is. Like, and I'm not going to sit here and go, what could they have done in the draft? Hey, look, if they traded for Brandon Ayuk and a couple other guys, like, then they would have been like through the roof. Like, oh yeah, they're back. Like, so there's not many moves they could have made for me to feel differently, to be honest with you. But it just feels like a transition year for them. Where hey, if they and I think it's going to be a bit of a changing of the guard of how they're going to do things. I think they're going back. Like the dream of that I had from 2020, 2021, when like Josh Allen had like ridiculous passing yards and he was getting 300-yard games every 2 weeks. That's gone. That's not happening this year. I think they're going to be more balanced, and I think you're going to see more tight ends involved now. I think that's I think a lot of people, maybe you tell me not. I think going 2 tight ends was more of a Dorsey decision. But I don't think it was. It was more of an organizational decision. Hence why they got to him. And I think they're going to want to do that. You can't have Dawson Knox sitting on the bench, and not, and coming in here and there and making what he makes. That sounds stupid. He and you and I are not giant fans of his. And I think they're going to want to put him on the field with Kincaid as much as possible. And he did not have a good year. That balance did not work last year between the two of them. And part of it was injuries and whatever, and change of philosophy. And we'll get all those buzzwords in training camp, like, oh, they got a fresh year in the system and everyone knows each other now. And there's no egos and everyone likes cookies and ice cream. And Josh Allen's a leader again. All this crap. And maybe it's all true. I don't know. But it's a transition year for them. I don't think, as I said, I think the Super Bowl window is not there anymore as of right now. I think it will be reopened in 2025 when they're more aggressive. But this year, I don't see them as a top 5 AFC team right now. And again, it doesn't mean they're going to fall off the face of the earth and be terrible. So send your hate tweets to Pat. Don't send them to me. I think they'll make the playoffs. They might win the division even, but I don't think they're in that Baltimore, KC. Definitely not the top. I mean, I'm all in on Houston. I think they're going to have a really fun team, and they're going to be an offensive explosion down there. They're in kind of a weak ass division, and I think they're going to take the Bills spot in terms of like, the big four were always Baltimore, the Bengals, and the Chiefs and the Bills, and I think the Bills are out of that for now. So if I'm wrong, I'm the first person that's going to come on this podcast and take my medicine and go, hey, I was wrong about that, and you can stone me at the town square, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I think you could have said that in 4 words. It's a transition year. I was like, all right, you reeled me in right there, right at the very beginning with that. I'm going to cheat because I got 2 here at the end.
I won't say anything afterwards. Go ahead.
I feel, and I know I'm going to sound like a hypocrite right now, but I feel like, man, it's my own fault too. I think I was duped a little bit with the Stefon Diggs trade. I truly felt in my mind that was, again, a chess piece to something bigger. I was good with it for that reason. Brandon Beane never said, I'm going to be making a big move. We assumed it. I assumed it. So I feel duped about that. And again, hindsight, had I known, I would have said, I don't give a shit if he's walking around in a t-shirt saying, fuck off Josh Allen for the whole year inside the locker room. I don't care. Get another year out of him. So that's my one. And then the other one, kind of to your point, I think Josh Allen's going to need to have by far the best season of his career. He's going to need to be a top 2 or 3 MVP candidate, if not win the whole thing, for this team to be any better than 500. Like if he regresses 15% from what he was last year, this is a team that might go 8 or 9. Yeah. That's how I feel about him.
Look,
as things stand right now,
it's going to be challenging. He doesn't have the same wide receivers. I would take, if you ask me what wide receiving core do I like more, the 2019 Bills with John Brown, Cole Beasley, I forgot who the third guy was, versus this one. I'm taking John Brown and Cole Beasley in 2019.
There's a bottom 10 receiving core in the NFL as a big fan right now.
Yeah, and so like I said, this is to Stephon Diggs' tweet when the one guy said he can do it without a number one wide receiver, and Stephon Diggs was like, "You sure?" We're gonna find out because this he hasn't had this before, and it's all on him now to do it. So good luck.
I want to say this. Maybe next week we will go through 31 other teams and list their receivers and we will slot where we think the Bills receiving unit is in the league, which people are going to think that we're just too obsessed with receivers, and they're going to say, you know what, Joe and Pat, you also can run the football. You also can play good defense. You also can have a quarterback who uses his legs. You also have a great tight end and a decent tight end. There is more to life in football besides how many good receivers you have. And people are going to say that. It won't be wrong. But anyway, maybe we'll do that anyway. All right, man. We're going to do it. Good show. I got it. I almost went the whole hour without swearing, and then I kind of let a couple go at the end. Hopefully your wife and baby aren't.
She yelled at me at some point during the podcast. I don't know why.
Don't blame her. Don't blame her, man.
Call me before during the podcast. I thought you were saying something to me. Sorry, I'm talking to her off camera. She was. I thought she was trying to tell me something midway through. She wanted to get my son on camera. We'll bring Andy next time. I mean, it's the off season, and we gotta kill time because we gotta come on an NBA podcast. We'll bring my son on. We'll bring Shane on. Maybe he can teach him the ropes.
By the way, 47 from Jalen Brunson. Go Knicks! Big win for the Knicks on Sunday. They go up 3-1. But anyway, all right, we're gonna get out of here. For Joe for Queens, I'm Pat. Talk to you. I'll be back tomorrow. Later,
Acknowledge us. Acknowledge me. Bye.